Am I the a-hole for asking my best friend to reconsider her wedding date? I never thought I'd find myself sitting in front of my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard as I prepare to recount one of the most difficult periods of my life. But here I am, ready to share my story on Reddit's AETA forum. I hope someone can help me see things more clearly, as I sometimes wonder if I'm the villain in my own story. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jenna, and I'm a 29-year-old marketing specialist living in a bustling city. Life has been a blend of ups and downs, but I'm always thankful to have my best friend, Lisa, by my side. We've been inseparable since freshman year of college, sharing dreams, heartbreaks, and far too many late-night snacks. Last year, I was devastated when I learned my father had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. The news hit me hard. He had been my rock, my biggest supporter, always cheering for me from the sidelines as I navigated through life's challenges. As I grappled with the reality of losing him, Lisa provided unconditional love, an anchor during the storm. In May, Lisa got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Adam. I was so happy for her. They were perfect together. Adam's kindness balanced Lisa's exuberance, and they shared a love that many people would envy. I don't know how I would have coped through my father's diagnosis without Lisa's support, so naturally, I looked forward to helping her plan the wedding of her dreams. However, the plans grew complicated. As the months passed, my father's condition worsened. We started preparing for what felt like an inevitable goodbye. On top of that, Lisa had chosen a wedding date in August, 2 weeks before my father's expected time frame for going home. In a grim twist of fate, his health was deteriorating rapidly, and every passing day brought a new sense of urgency and dread. I didn't want to be the friend who stirred up drama, especially as Lisa was making her own plans. But after countless sleepless nights and forced smiles, I finally mustered the courage to talk to her. "Lisa," I began one evening when we were brainstorming wedding invites over a bottle of wine, "can we talk about your wedding date?" She looked up at me, puzzled. "What about it?" "Well, it's just—" I took a deep breath. "I might not be able to attend. I mean, things with my dad are really tough right now. I'm worried that he might not even be around for the wedding." Her eyes softened, but her brows furrowed slightly. "Jenna, I've been thinking about this. We've set our date. It's what we've worked towards for so long. I really want you there as my maid of honor." I felt a pit in my stomach tighten more at her words. "I want to be there, Lisa. You have no idea how much I do, but—" I paused, the lump in my throat nearly choking me. "What if you could shift the date, just in case?" She recoiled slightly as if I had slapped her. "Shift the date? Jenna, that's ridiculous. What if you're worrying for nothing? What if your dad gets better? Their wedding date ties so many people together. I can't just change it because of your family situation." The room, once filled with laughter and plans for facings and flowers, felt suddenly heavy, a dark cloud, all because of my request. "I'm not asking you to change everything for me, just to think about it. This is a significant moment in your life, and the last thing I would want is to leave my dad's side for it. Please understand my perspective. What if he's not there?" Lisa sighed deeply, the frustration inside of her simmering to the surface. "We all have our troubles, Jenna. I just lost my job, and planning this wedding is the only thing keeping me sane. Can't you be happy for me without putting any more pressure on this?" My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest. I hadn't meant to push her away. I was merely trying to find a way to reconcile my own grief with her happiness. I am happy for you, but do you see how hard this is for me?" Our night ended abruptly, with Lisa storming out after a few harsh words were exchanged. I felt shattered, the argument lingering in the air like stale bread, both of us unwilling to swallow our pride and apologize. As I scrolled through my social media in the following days, I could see every post Lisa made about her wedding, from dress fittings to cake tastings. It felt like a gauntlet of happiness that I couldn't bear to traverse. The wedding was becoming a reminder of all I was about to lose, and I began to regret my request entirely. Days turned into weeks as my father's condition continued to decline, leaving us all feeling eerily numb. I attended family gatherings. In between the days we sat by his side, but the weight of my argument with Lisa hung over me like a shadow. Then came the news that changed everything. One day in late June, while I was visiting my dad, I received a text from Lisa. It simply read, "I don't think we can be friends anymore. You weren't there for me when I needed you to be." I dropped my phone. The sound of it clattering against the floor echoed through the empty room. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to fight back the emotion that bubbled to the surface, but the strong grip of grief held me hostage. I felt utterly defeated. I was losing an irreplaceable bond, and I hadn't even seen it coming. Days turned into a tortuous cycle of heartache as I tried to navigate the impending loss of my father, while mourning the loss of my friendship with Lisa. I felt isolated and adrift, detached from the life I once knew. A few days after my father passed, I received a package in the mail, a beautifully wrapped gift accompanied by a heartfelt card from Lisa. My heart raced as I opened it to find a small, delicate locket containing a photo of the two of us from happier times, along with a handwritten note that read, "I'm so sorry for your loss. You are my best friend, and I miss you dearly." Tears streamed down my face as I cradled the locket in my palm. I thought about all the love we had for one another, the laughter we shared, the dreams we had yet to create. It felt choked underneath the weight of the anguish I was grappling with. I knew we couldn't just throw that away because of a miscommunication. That evening, I sat at my dining room table, phone in hand, trembling with anxiety. The screen lit up as I drafted a message to Lisa, pouring out every ounce of my raw grief. I told her how much I missed her, how sorry I was for pushing her away. I acknowledged her wishes, promising I would always support her happiness, regardless of how it affected my grief. "Please," I typed with tears cascading down my face, "let's try to find a way to be there for one another again. Can we talk?" After what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed. Her reply was brief but warm. "I'd really like that." Within days, we found a time to meet. My heart raced as I walked into the cafe, but when I saw Lisa sitting at the table, her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, and I felt a rush of hope. We embraced, holding each other tightly as if trying to merge our suffering with every possible ounce of love we had left. We talked for hours, sharing stories, struggles, and the ways we could heal together. Lisa told me that I was, and always would be, her best friend, and that although our lives took different paths, our hearts remained intertwined. "I want you by my side, Jenna. Come what may," she said, tears spilling onto her cheeks as we wrapped up our conversation. I couldn't help but see the brilliance that was our bond. Though life may take us in different directions at times, love would always be the compass guiding us back to each other. A month later, I stood beside Lisa. At her wedding, my heart occupying two spaces, filled with joy for her and sadness for my father's absence. In moments like these, I found solace in the fragile beauty of life, being reminded that relationships require nurturing. Sometimes we fail to communicate, but what matters at the end of the day is that we don't lose sight of the love that remains. In the aftermath, as I look out at the world beyond my window, I recognize how fragile existence truly is. I've learned that while I may have felt like the a-hole in that moment, it was both of our hearts breaking that forged the path. Back to an understanding bond. Life may challenge you, yet love will always find a way back home. Am I the a-hole for leaving my best friend on the side of the road? They say that friendship is a two-way street, but there are times when the traffic of expectations becomes so heavy that one person inevitably gets run over. My story started with everything we loved about life: laughter, a shared playlist playing on repeat, and dreams that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. Now, sitting in my small apartment, I can't shake off the haunting question: am I the a-hole for leaving my best friend on the side of the road? I should probably introduce myself. Hi, I'm Adam, a 27-year-old freelance graphic designer living in the bustling city of Atlanta. I'm someone who has called many places home, but somehow I always wind up back in this chaotic metropolis. It's a hot summer evening, and I'm pleasantly exhausted after an intense week of back-to-back freelance projects. The sun is finally setting, throwing a warm golden hue across my cluttered living room. I pour myself a glass of Merlot to unwind, but the vibrant reflections of the city remind me of the storm brewing within me. It all began during one of those perfect autumn weekends when the air was sharp, crisp, and electric with possibility. My best friend Tanya and I were excitedly planning a road trip to the mountains. We often talked about that trip, a chance to disconnect from everything mundane and escape into nature. Tanya is a breath of fresh air, spontaneous, imaginative, and unafraid to chase wild dreams. The trip materialized quicker than we expected. We booked a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, packed the car with snacks, and loaded our playlist with songs that made us feel nostalgic. I still remember that Friday evening, as we loaded the car outside her apartment, her laughter ringing like chimes in the wind. "Are you finally ready to witness the beauty of fall?" she teased, tossing me a pack of gummy bears. "Only if you promise you won't sing off-key the entire way," I shot back. But, as the miles rolled by, our jubilant spirits began to give way to an undercurrent of tension. It was subtle at first, just a slight change in Tanya's demeanor. I thought it was the car's radio drowning out her usual exuberance, but soon I caught her sulking in silence, staring blankly out the window. "Hey, what's up?" I asked after a while. "Nothing. I'm fine," she replied, her eyes still fixed outside as if searching for answers outside the car. "Really? Because fine doesn't look great on you," I remarked, trying to lighten the mood. "Just worried about things, I guess." Her tone was sharp, but she quickly shook her head, dismissing her own concern. "Like what? The state of the world? Or the pumpkin spice lattes in Starbucks?" I joked, but she didn't laugh. The trip should have been a simple getaway, but somewhere along the journey, Tanya revealed that her boyfriend, Matt, who I had often felt held her back, had decided to break up with her just a week before. I hadn't even known they were having problems. My heart sank as she shared her confusion and hurt. I wanted to be the supportive friend, but I struggled to find the right words. I thought he was different. I thought this time was going to be different." Her voice trembled as she spoke, and I could see the sadness mirrored in her eyes. "Hey, you're strong," I offered weakly, feeling helpless. "How you'll get through this?" I just wanted to escape Adam. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the bracelets on her wrist. "You don't have to be alone." "I'm right here," I said, hoping to comfort her. But I think that's when my guilt began to compound. I was there as a friend, but I was also wishing the weight of her heartbreak would ease up a bit. After all, I had my own struggles with work, bills, and an ongoing spiraling creative block. Tanya needed a friend, and I needed to focus on holistically us. Once we arrived at the cabin with its rustic charm surrounded by lush trees bursting with autumn colors, I thought the beauty would lift Tanya's spirits. We dropped our bags inside, and I suggested we go for a walk. After all, nothing like the fresh mountain air to ease a wounded heart. As we walked, I could sense where the tension really originated. Tanya was scrolling through her phone, still wrapped up in the world. She tried to escape. I attempted to point out the vibrant foliage enveloping us, expressing the sheer joy of being in nature's embrace. But her reply was curt. She didn't want to talk about anything cheerful, didn't want to wander away from her aching heart. Frustrated, I said, "You know what? It doesn't always have to be about Matt. You're here, we have this beautiful getaway, so let's forget that part and find something fun." "Right, because running from my problems is the key, right?" she snapped back, anger bubbling up in her voice. I didn't expect her outburst. I could feel my own patience wearing thin, and in that moment, I was unprepared for how fragile our friendship had become. "I'm not asking you to run. I just thought we could enjoy being together, you know. Just you and me," I shot back. Her eyes blazed as she threw her phone against the trunk of a nearby tree. "What do you want from me? I'm supposed to be cheerful now because you want me to be." After a pause, she stormed back to the cabin, pedal to the metal, leading to charged silence. By the time the sun dipped beneath the horizon, settling behind the mountains like a promise of reprieve, I found myself pacing the cabin. I wanted to bridge the gap, but words caught in my throat. I tried small talk, but nothing landed. It all felt heavy, burdened by the weight of her sorrow and my growing irritation. Eventually, I attempted the comfort strategy, suggesting we order takeout. "At least we can have something good to eat, right?" I said. "I'm not hungry," she said, dragging the words like thick mud. "Fine, I'll order something. I'll make sure to get your favorite. Whatever. And then it hit me. Tanya was turning me into the villain in this tale. A few hours later, I finally snapped. As I fidgeted with my phone, the frustration bubbled over like a boiling pot. "You're acting like a total ass," I blurted out, tears welling in her eyes. "You haven't even tried to understand," she yelled back, face flushed, chin trembling with anger and disappointment. "You expect me to just forget. You have no idea what I'm going through." I threw my hands up in a final gesture of hopelessness. "What do you want me to do, sit here and wallow with you? That doesn't help anyone." We stood there, locked in a standoff of our emotions, until I made a rash decision. Maybe I should just drive back. "Clearly you don't even want to be here, you just want to drag me down with you," I hissed. "Fine, go leave." She shifted, fury boiling over. I stormed out of the cabin without another word, returning to the car filled with a mix of guilt and anger. As the tires rolled along the winding road, I felt the weight of a terrible decision settle over me. Was I really the villain here? No one teaches you how to navigate the murky waters of friendship versus personal needs. I fought against myself the whole drive home, analyzing every historic moment of our friendship. Forcing myself to push forward, I happened to glance in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of Tanya standing alone against the backdrop of the setting sun. She looked small in that moment, all her power stripped away, and guilt flooded my veins like poison. But the world did not stop. Maybe it was adrenaline or my own mounting sense of self-preservation, but I carried on, pushing the pedal to the floor. The realization that I'd abandoned my best friend, leaving her to fend for herself in the mountains, clouded every thought. Now, sitting in the dim light of my apartment, I have to face the consequences of my actions. Friends don't leave friends on the side of the road, right? But I felt trapped, torn between allowing Tanya to bludgeon me with her world of sadness and my desperate need to protect my own mental sanity. I can't quite shake the verbosity of her words. "You might as well leave me." Sounds like a haunting echo embedded in my mind. Am I the a-hole for raising my own boundaries and walking away, knowing that she's going through a rough patch? The answer plagues me, unyielding in its presence. I scroll through my phone, 3 texts awaited, 2 from Tanya and 1 from Matt. My heart races as I read Tanya's. "Thanks for abandoning me when I needed you the most, Adam." A sharp pain cuts through me, as if a knife had found locked ribs. I want to respond, to tie the broken edges of our friendship together. But what do I even say? I reach for the vino, desperate to drown the anxiety gnawing at my insides. But as I pour the deep red liquid in to disguise what I feel, I realize that the heartache isn't just hers anymore. It grows within me, winding viciously with swirling memories of laughter and love swamped with regret. Wanahole's decision has turned a beautiful adventure into my personal nightmare. Therefore, my messy journey ends here, unsure but longing, for a reconnection with the only person who truly understood the intertwining highways of hope and despair I'd just abandoned. I truly wonder, am I the a-hole for walking away? Or simply human, still needing to piece together my own heart? Am I the a-hole for not apologizing to my ex? I never imagined I would find myself sharing my personal life on a platform like Reddit, but here I am, seeking clarity on a situation that has left me reeling for weeks. I'm still grappling with the aftermath, so please be gentle with your judgments and advice. To set the stage, let me introduce myself. I'm Jake, a 28-year-old freelance photographer living in Portland. My life revolves around capturing fleeting moments, but lately, the snapshots in my mind have become jagged pieces of broken memories. My ex-girlfriend Clara and I dated for 3 years. It was an intense relationship, filled with laughter, love and, unfortunately, betrayal. Clara and I met at a friend's party, drawn to each other by an inexplicable magnetic force. She was passionate, headstrong, and had a heart that overflowed with dreams. I could listen to her talk about her aspirations for hours. I felt like the luckiest guy in the room until I discovered, near the end of our relationship, the formidable shadow behind her bright facade. She had cheated on me, twice to be specific. The first time I gave her a chance to explain herself. I wanted to believe her claims of having made a mistake, the classic, it meant nothing line that echoed in my mind. When we got back together, I thought I could forgive but not forget. However, the second betrayal felt like a knife through the heart. In our final confrontation, she broke down, admitting she had feelings for someone else, a close friend of hers, who I had purportedly warned her about. That was the breaking point for me. I moved out of our shared apartment, and our once vibrant love crumbled into bitter ashes. We hadn't spoken since that day, until a few weeks ago. I was at my local cafe editing some photographs when I heard a voice calling my name. I turned to find Clara standing there, anxiety painted across her features. I tried to ignore the surge of emotions, those memories rushing back like an untamed river, but it was futile. We exchanged polite but awkward pleasantries and settled into a conversation that felt surreal. She was curious about my life, asking how things were after our breakup. I wanted to throw my cup of coffee in her face and yell at her for being the architect of my heartbreak. Instead, I just told her it was fine, that I'd moved on. It felt like an unwanted reunion, and I could see a hint of sadness in her eyes as I kept it casual. Then the conversation took a turn. "I'm really sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I messed everything up. I wish I could go back and change." At that moment, the floodgates opened, and I let my feelings spill out. I told Clara how her betrayals had shattered my trust in love. I explained how I spent nights in agony, wondering what I did wrong, and days convincing myself I could still be happy again. Instead of falling into a pit of regret and sorrow, I had emerged stronger but guarded. "I don't think you understand the extent of damage you caused," I said, my voice steady. "You broke my heart, and I don't see how an 'I'm sorry' can fix that." I could see her swallowing back tears, and in that moment I felt a touch of sympathy, but it was fleeting. When I finished, she took a deep breath. "I know there's nothing I can say to take that away, but I want you to know I've spent a lot of time reflecting on our relationship. I've changed, Jake. I truly am sorry." Then she said something. That made me see red. "Can't we at least be friends? I miss having you in my life." The suggestion felt like adding salt to an open wound. I stared at her, my expression hardened by disbelief. "Friends? Clara, that's a cute idea, but no. We can't go back. You can't just sweep everything under the rug like it never happened." She shifted uncomfortably, and the positivity that had painted her features minutes ago faded into shame. I could feel the room closing in around us, and I stood up, preparing to leave. "You're asking a lot from me when you shattered my trust. I can't just pretend that didn't happen." That's when she reached out, pleading with her voice. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but please, can't we try to make amends?" I felt conflicted, torn between my emotions and the gaping wound in my heart. I had spent 2 years healing, and yet, Clara, the tempest that had tossed my life into chaos, was asking me to be her friend. I shook my head, stuck between anger and pity. "No, Clara, I can't do that. I don't think I ever will." I left the cafe, leaving her there, the girl who once filled my life with colors, now a shadow of regret. My thoughts raced as I walked, my heart throbbing in rhythm with a tempest of indignation and sorrow. I knew I had hurt her, but seeing her there, pleading for some form of connection while acknowledging the pain she caused, made me feel justified. Yet my pulse was still rapid with anger at how she could ask for friendship after everything. I vented to my friend Sarah, who listened patiently as I unspooled the complications of my heart. "Am I the a-hole for saying no?" I asked her, trying to imagine myself in Clara's position and failing miserably at it. Sarah shook her head. "You were honest, Jake. She hurt you, and you don't owe her anything, especially not forgiveness or friendship. That's something she needs to earn." The next few weeks blurred together. Social media became a double-edged sword. The reminders of what I had lost flourished in my feeds. I kept to myself, throwing myself into my projects and avoiding shared spaces where we might cross paths. I tried not to think of Clara, but every thought felt like a stepping stone back to her again. Meeting her eyes, the sound of her laughter, everything was a distant echo haunting the corridors of my mind. Then came the day of inevitable confrontation. I was enjoying a rare sunny day in my favorite park, capturing the vibrant hues of nature, when I saw her again. Clara sat with a friend on a nearby bench, looking blissfully relaxed. Her hair cascaded down her shoulders, and I could feel my heart lurch at the sight. I contemplated slipping away, but something stopped me. Taking a deep breath and steadying my camera, I pressed the shutter button, wanting to capture an image of someone I once loved. A bittersweet reminiscence, but a reminder of how far I had come. Photography is a form of preserving moments, right? I murmured to myself, spiraling into memories. Suddenly I heard a voice behind me. "Jake!" I turned around to find Clara standing there, her friend still perched on the bench. She managed a hesitant smile, but the tension still clung to the air between us. "I didn't think I'd find you here," she said, and I noted the wavering tone. My throat tightened, but I maintained my cool demeanor. "I'm just enjoying the weather." Clara nodded, a long pause stretching between us. I searched for something to say, anything that might begin to bridge the gap, but it all suddenly felt futile. "I just wanted to say I respect your decision after the cafe." She finally broke the silence. "I know it might take a long time, but I hope you think of me differently someday. I just hated leaving things the way they are." I studied her, the girl who was once all-consuming in my life, trying to fathom the emotions swirling within me. Maybe I once sought closure, but now closure felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, my insides tangled in a hopeless dance of emotions. "I appreciate the sentiment, but it'll take time. I just can't be around you right now." She nodded, sorrow flickering in her eyes. "I understand. I'll cherish the memories we had, but I'll give you your space." With that, Clara turned to walk back to her friend. As her figure faded into the crowd, I raised my camera and framed the setting sun, a silhouette against vibrant hues that reminded me of our better days. I pressed the shutter, letting the image remain. Days blended into weeks. I began to take small steps forward, exploring the city again and connecting with friends old and new. I buried myself in my work, submitting photographs to galleries, renewing my love for capturing pieces of life I had once overlooked. Clara became a distant memory, a metaphor for storms weathered and lessons learned. Yet, with the leap of fortune, sometimes comes uncertainty. As I contemplated my response to Clara's heartfelt apology, a moment I had often revisited, I found myself pulled back to the puzzle of our relationship. Perhaps my steadfast rejection made me the villain in someone else's story. But I knew how vital it was to honor my healing, regardless of how she felt. Eventually, I found the nerve to post my situation on Reddit. "Am I the a-hole for not apologizing to my ex?" I wrote, sharing my journey and the emotional turmoil of betrayal, putting myself out there for others to dissect and advise. In the days that followed, the responses flooded in, along with perspectives I hadn't considered. Most commenters felt I was justified in my feelings, while others challenged my adamance to deny Clara a chance at redemption. It was an enlightening experience, a world of voices reminding me of the complexities of love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the paths we take to heal. However, through the encouragement of strangers and the support of my friends, I began to realize something profound. My heart was no longer a battleground for Clara's choices. I had transformed my pain into art. It was safe to keep moving forward. Maybe there were no clear-cut answers. Maybe it took time to mend the fabric of trust once torn apart. But I finally felt ready to write new stories, one defined by choices, fueled by love and self-respect, free from the shadows of someone who could no longer hold power over my heart. In the end, I'm not saying I'll never forgive Clara, but I've learned that healing isn't linear. It's a unique tapestry woven with threads of joy, pain, and self-discovery, and I'll embrace every bit of it. I may have been the a-hole in Clara's narrative, but in my own story I became the hero of my own heart. Am I the a-hole? I am a 28-year-old woman named Lydia. For most of my adult life, I've prided myself on being independent and self-sufficient. My parents taught me the importance of hard work and responsibility from a young age, values that I carried into adulthood. I graduated college with honors, climbed the corporate ladder in my tech job, and kept my personal life neat and tidy. But recently, I found myself navigating a particularly murky water of family dynamics that made me question not just my decisions, but my character. This all started about a year ago when my younger brother, Alex, lost his job. At 25, he was still figuring out his life, bouncing between various auditions and part-time jobs in the hope of launching his dream of becoming a screenwriter. His passion was admirable, the first one in our family to embrace the arts, but his ambition hadn't yet translated into stability. I'd watched him struggle, and it pained me. Alex was always the artistic one, and he had a unique perspective on the world. However, he often pitched ideas that went nowhere, and his lack of a fallback plan made me anxious. So when Alex called me up one evening, his voice shaky, I could sense this was a turning point. "Lydia, I'm out of money. I think I might need to move back in with you." My heart sank. There's a significant age difference between us, and I had hoped that by the time I was settled in my life, he would be too. Still, I loved my brother. I wanted to support him as best as I could, albeit with apprehension. I responded cautiously. "Are you sure? You'd be fine living with me?" "Yeah, I'd help out with bills," he assured me. "I promise." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We made arrangements for him to move in the following week. At first, having him around provided a strange comfort. There was a sense of nostalgia. We'd relive our childhood antics and binge-watch films together under the dim glow of the living room lights. But inevitably, the novelty faded, and I began to feel the strain of having Alex, my baby brother, under my roof. It wasn't long before personal habits showed their true colors. 2 months in, and the tension started growing. Alex often stayed up late, scribbling in his notebooks, while I had to wake up to go to the office. His messiness clashed with my organized, structured home. I would find open takeout containers scattered across the kitchen, empty cans piled up, weaving between my meticulously maintained book collection, which he had thoughtlessly borrowed, without asking. The breaking point, however, came when I found that he had been using my laptop without my permission. It was a total invasion of privacy. I came home one day to find him nestled comfortably on the couch, immersed in a screenplay he was writing. His own laptop lay lifeless on the floor, the screen shattered because he had dropped it, and I was still processing the fact that he hadn't even thought to ask. "Alex, can we talk?" I began, trying to keep my voice steady despite the sensation of impending doom weighing on my chest. "Sure," he replied casually, glancing up from his script. "I noticed you've been using my laptop." Without asking, his response was a mixture of surprise and defiance. "Oh, come on, Lyd, it's just a laptop. You know I'm working on an important project." "That's not the point. It doesn't matter if it's an important project or not. You should have asked me." He leaned back, looking annoyed. "You're not using it. I figured it would be fine." I could feel the heat rising. "That's not how boundaries work. You're living in my space." In hindsight, I let my frustration peek through, raising my voice. "This is why I've had a problem with you moving in. You're treating this place like it's just a hangout when it's my home." We spiraled into a full-blown argument, each of us hurling words we didn't mean. I stormed away to my bedroom, my heart racing with anger and disappointment. Though deep down I knew part of me was upset, not just about the laptop, but about him invading my personal space in ways I didn't know how to articulate. The days that followed felt frosty. Alex barely spoke to me, except to give a curt, "I'm sorry," before retreating to his own world. But I was still seething inside, grappling with whether I had crossed a line. You see, I had been raised in an environment where confrontation was met with silence rather than resolution, and that's how it felt each day as we tiptoed around each other, our once warm camaraderie replaced with chilly detachment. Weeks passed, and our relationship remained strained. One night, I decided to throw a small get-together with friends to alleviate the heavy atmosphere. I figured it could bring some light back into the house and allow us to reconnect through laughter and good company. I didn't let Alex know ahead of time, though. I just set out the snacks, decorated the small space with candles and twinkling fairy lights, and invited a few close friends. The atmosphere turned electric as my friends arrived, and we began chatting over drinks. But then, to my utter dismay, a tipsy Alex emerged from his cave. He paced around the living room, oblivious to the fact that this was my gathering. "Hey, are you guys drinking?" he chirped, as he stumbled across the area where we were sitting, an audible slur in his voice. He grabbed a drink from the table without a glance and plopped down on the couch next to my friend Sarah, who was clearly taken aback by his uninvited presence. "Yeah, have you guys seen my new screenplay? It's really cool. It's super meta-artistic. I was thinking of doing a scene about how brothers and sisters don't really get along these days. What's your take?" My face flushed red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. Sensing the tension rising around the room, I could see my friends whispering amongst themselves. I felt utterly exposed. He was overstepping not just boundaries, he was ruining my night. "Alex, can we talk in private?" I practically hissed, leading him away from the crowd towards the kitchen. "Why are you so uptight? I was just trying to share." He looked offended, his eyes wide with disbelief. "There's a time and a place. This is my gathering, not yours. Can you please just respect that?" Defensively, he crossed his arms. "Maybe if you weren't so worried about being the adult, you could enjoy things." "I thought you were better than this." That cut deep. "I'm trying to enjoy myself, but you're making it impossible. It feels like you're living in my head, consuming my space." The argument simmered down as we both felt the heated tension, but ultimately walked away without resolution once again. I returned to my friends, feeling the weight of betrayal under the guise of family loyalty. While he sulked back to his room, I was relieved when my friends left that night, but I was sour about how the evening unfolded. The following day, I woke up to chaos. The remnants of last night, the empty bottles, the scattered cups lay strewn around, and my heart sank when I noticed that Alex had invited his friends over without telling me. They treated my apartment like it was a communal space, laughing loudly and making themselves entirely too comfortable. Finally, the tension boiled over, and I snapped. Am I the a-hole for needing a personal space, especially when I'm the one paying rent here? The words escaped me before I could catch myself. My friends had arrived for a small brunch, and Alex's chaotic crew was all over the apartment. The intrusion felt unbearable, and I turned on Alex, who was sprawled along the couch without a worry in the world. "Seriously, Alex? You couldn't. Ask me about having your friends over. It's my home too." My voice felt raw, but it spilled out with force. His eyes widened in shock, and he shoved himself up from the couch. "Maybe you have some growing up to do. Not everything is about you, Lydia." Suddenly I felt small again. "No, this is about respect, and you don't get to trample over my space just because you're family." After that burst, I regretted engaging like that with him, but it struck a chord in me that I couldn't shake off. I felt like the adult, in the situation, trying to corral the mess that was my brother, while he stubbornly insisted on being carefree, heedless of the consequences. In the weeks that followed, I decided it was time for a serious talk. I couldn't continue living in this tension. Once again, I felt the underlying question rising to the surface. Am I the a-hole for expecting more from my brother and wanting to create boundaries in our living arrangement? When I finally muster up the courage to approach him, it was a quiet evening. "Can we talk? Like really talk?" I asked as I knocked on his door, fingers trembling. Alex sighed. "Fine, what now?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "Maybe we should set some ground rules. We both deserve our space, and maybe we should sit down and work on this together." To my surprise, he seemed to lean in, genuinely interested. "Okay, I'm listening." And for the first time, I saw my younger brother as someone who was willing to navigate this messy transition into adulthood with me. Maybe I wasn't just the a-hole. I could be a sister trying to help. Finally, as we moved forward in honesty, I felt the bond between us begin to mend, learning that love often has to live in the gray areas, where patience and understanding could help heal wounds that felt too deep. So I guess the question remains, am I really the a-hole for wanting to set boundaries? I just wanted my home back. But more than that, I craved the connection with my brother that felt lost in all the chaos, because ultimately he was still my family, and I'd do anything to keep that intact. Am I the a-hole? The first time I logged onto Reddit's Am I the a-hole, it was out of sheer boredom. I had recently settled into my first post-college job, and the monotony of a 9-to-5 grind was finally beginning to suffocate me. I was perpetually exhausted, trapped in this routine of waking, commuting, working, and collapsing onto my bed, with only the flickering light of my laptop to keep my company on those lonely nights. I remember scrolling through the posts, reading about people's dramatic encounters, their moral dilemmas, and their raw stories filled with emotions. It felt comforting, like a chat with a barista who was all too eager to hear about your troubles, and I slowly became addicted to the judgments of anonymous strangers. That was how it all began, the chain of events that would lead me to write my own story and potentially unleash a tidal wave of opinions I wasn't sure I could handle. It was a regular Thursday when I found myself staring at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It had been an absolutely chaotic week. No matter how hard I tried to maintain composure, my life felt like it was spiraling out of control. My roommate, Jenna, an effervescent art major, who could somehow always turn any situation into a spontaneous party, had announced she would be hosting a gallery show of her best work. I was excited, not just for her, but for the opportunity to meet new people. But then came the problem. The venue. Jenna decided to host her show in our tiny, cramped apartment, a space more suited for Netflix marathons than an art exhibit. When I first heard about her plans, I offered my encouragement, thinking she'd change her mind once she realized that we could barely fit a coffee table in the living room, let alone a full display of paintings. However, Jenna was resolute, her passionate spirit unapologetically infectious, and before I knew it, she'd invited over a dozen people for what I thought would be an absolute disaster. The days leading up to the show were absurd. I swept floors, cleaned out closets, and helped hang her artwork. Every time I attempted to voice concerns about the lack of space, Jenna would wave me off with a casual giggle. "It'll give it character," she said, as if the modesty of our apartment would somehow transform into an artistic statement. Was standing in the kitchen on the day of the show, trying to distract myself from the pending social chaos. I had agreed to provide a few snacks and drinks, but before I could even finish arranging some cheese and crackers, the doorbell rang. Anxiously opened the door to find a group of unfamiliar faces. They greeted Jenna as though they were long-lost friends, exclaiming over her work with a zeal that left me dazed. As they spilled into the apartment, I felt my anxiety rising, the small space morphing into a crowded nest of awkwardness. I tried to play the role of a supportive roommate, but I found myself retreating into my room, seeking solace in my phone. It was in that moment of isolation that my chaotic thoughts took shape. What if I shared the turmoil of the night with the internet? Would I be the a-hole in this situation? I took a deep breath and opened the Reddit app, my fingers clacking rapidly against the screen. Title: Am I the a-hole for wanting my roommate to scale back her art show because it's taking over our apartment and stressing me out? So my roommate Jenna is having this big art show at our apartment. Pretty cool, right? Except our place is tiny, like I can barely move without bumping into something. Jenna's been excited about this for weeks, but meanwhile, I'm losing my mind. I suggested renting a gallery space, but she didn't think we needed it. Now our apartment is like an NPC-filled video game. I feel like I have to dodge people to get to the bathroom. I thought it was just supposed to be a small gathering, but she invited a ton of people. I didn't even want this show to happen here. Now I'm freaking out because my place is a mess, and people are using my stuff, and I'm not sure how to handle all these strangers. So am I the a-hole for wanting to dial this back, or do I just suck it up and let the art happen? Help! I hit post and tried to sift through my worry. The responses when they came were overwhelming. It was an immediate mix of support and skepticism. User 2341, NTA, it's your place too. You deserve comfort at home. Art Vibes 90, YTA. If you love your roommate, you should support her passion. Just let go and enjoy. I found myself feeling defensive. Were these people calling me selfish? I had always considered myself the kind type, the one who'd give up my seat on the bus or share my lunch if someone forgot theirs. But this was different. I was being thrust into a world I didn't want to navigate. Just as I began to engage with the comments, replying with my side of the story, the door swung open wider and a wave of chatter swept through the apartment. Jenna's friends, artists, and musicians flooded into the room. The atmosphere danced with creativity and spontaneity. Laughter erupted like fireworks, and for a moment it cast aside my overbearing anxiety. I padded back into the living space, drawn in by curiosity, realizing I would need to step outside of my comfort zone. Maybe it wouldn't be a complete disaster after all. I could manage. Slowly, I found myself mingling. Jenna was radiant, basking in the praise of her guests. Everyone seemed to appreciate her work, and as the night wore on, I began to loosen, my grip on my discomfort. As I sipped a drink, I even found myself chatting with a guy named Alex, whose enthusiasm for art rivaled Jenna's own. He told me about his journey from a small town to pursuing a career in design, and it reminded me of Jenna's story, her faithful belief that dreams could become reality. I couldn't help but admire his passion, and more importantly, I didn't want the night to end in chaos. Unbeknownst to me, my phone buzzed repeatedly with comments on my post. I had forgotten all about it until Jenna playfully pulled me back into the madness, demanding I help with the next round of food. In the flurry of conversation, I found myself at the kitchen counter, laughing with Jenna's friends as whiffs of cheese and olive oil filled the air. Flipping the platter in my hands, I caught snippets of praise for my roommate's work, and suddenly it made sense. This chaotic tribe was where Jenna truly thrived. Maybe I wasn't the a-hole after all. In that moment of connection, I could see how I had let my fears cloud my perspective. What mattered was supporting my friend during her achievement, even if it was in our cramped apartment, surrounded by strangers who, just like me, were figuring out their paths. And then I heard a ping. Glancing at my watch, I saw that my post had gained traction. I hesitated and cracked my phone open amid laughter and mingling guests. User artisan, 23. YTA. But everyone grows, and so does your friendship. Maybe try embracing it? I chuckled. At the myriad of responses, realizing that if nothing else, this experience had steered me towards self-reflection. I wasn't the a-hole, I was human. I had desires for personal space, conflicts about comfort, and fears about social gatherings, just like everyone else in that apartment. As the night went on, the gallery show transformed into a celebration of creativity and individuality. Somewhere between swaying to a tune I'd never heard and laughing with Jenna's friends, I felt a sense of kinship. I cherished that wild night and the friends I'd unexpectedly made. By the end of the evening, I had lost track of time, and the chaos of the show had given birth to something beautiful, a deeper understanding of my life and my friendships. I was not only rooting for Jenna's dreams, but had begun to confront my own fears of stepping out from behind the screen, needing validation. When the last guest finally trickled out and the door clicked shut, I plopped down on the couch beside Jenna, who appeared dazed yet ecstatic. She looked over and grinned, exclaiming, "See, what did I tell you? It worked out." And in that moment, I couldn't help but smile. Every worry, every discomfort morphed into a valuable lesson about supporting the people we love, embracing chaos, and recognizing that sometimes being human and flawed isn't just permissible, it's what makes life vibrant. Okay, maybe. I was kind of an a-hole, I laughed, and we shared a knowing grin. The night had been messy and beautiful, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Am I the a-hole? So I had an experience that I feel compelled to share and get some outside perspective on, because frankly, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know if I'm an inconsiderate jerk or if my friends have gone a bit overboard. The situation revolves around my best friend Jake and our small group of friends, all of whom are in their early 30s, just trying to navigate adulthood like the rest of us. Let me back up a little. I'm Sarah, a 31-year-old freelance graphic designer who's just trying to stay afloat in a city that often feels like it's trying to drown me. Like many of my friends, I have a creative job that often doesn't pay well. We're all hustling, working side gigs, and pouring our souls into projects that might not ever see the light of day. It's frustrating, but we support each other. We're a tight-knit group consisting of me, Jake, Mia, and Kevin. We've been friends for nearly a decade, through thick and thin, relationships, heartbreaks, and career changes. A few months back, Jake got a great opportunity. He was offered a position as a lead designer at a well-known marketing agency. We were all excited for him. He deserved it because he's incredibly talented and has worked hard. Not only did it come with a better paycheck, but it also came with the kind of prestige that every creative craves. There was just one underlying problem. It required him to move across the country to New York City. Initially, we were supportive of Jake moving. We celebrated his new job at a barbecue in my backyard, drinking cheap beer and feasting on charred burgers. But as the date of his departure loomed closer, an unexpected tension began to fill the air, turning excitement into a bittersweet sadness. I'm not proud of this, but I've always harbored a bit of jealousy toward Jake. He's the kind of guy who seems to effortlessly score the best gig, while I'm often stuck slogging away at uninspiring contracts to make rent. I've watched him thrive in the freelance world, quickly establishing a reputation as a rising star, while I fought tooth and nail just to land the next gig. Sometimes even listening to him brag about his successes made me bristle. But I pushed those feelings aside because friendship is supposed to be a support system, right? That summer, we were there for him as he prepared to move, helping him pack and saying all the right things, even throwing a huge farewell party at Mia's apartment. It was a night filled with laughter, nostalgia, and lots of toasts to Jake's bright future. Or at least I tried to put my feelings aside. A week before Jake left, something unexpected happened. I received an email from a startup I had applied to months ago. Out of the blue, they wanted to interview me for a lead designer position. Unlike Jake's opportunity, this gig required me to remain in our beloved city. They were a small but thrilling company, and after doing background research, I learned they had lots of potential. I was ecstatic. The email felt like a lifeline tossed into my turbulent sea of doubt and stress. My interview was scheduled for the day after Jake's farewell party. The night was filled with hype for Jake and his new life in New York. Smiling faces surrounded me even as my heart raced from the prospect of something changing in my own life. Maybe I could finally break out of this rut. As expected, Jake was the center of attention that night. Every toast was to his success. Every conversation spun around his move and his future. As the night wore on and after several drinks, I finally cracked. The words spilled from my mouth like word vomit. I mentioned my interview in a flippant manner, not fully thinking through my words or seeing Jake's face drain of color. "Oh, I completely forgot to mention, I have an interview tomorrow. Can you believe we might both be chasing our dreams?" I forced a smile, expecting claps or cheers, but instead got uncomfortable silence. The mood shifted violently. Jake seemed rattled, and before I could grasp what was happening, he snapped, "Really, can't you just let me have my moment? You're always competing with me." It caught me off guard. I had meant it as a casual mention, but something about it triggered something deep within him. Or maybe it was just the alcohol. I shot back defensively. "This isn't about you, Jake. I'm happy for you and engaged with my own life. You've had all the attention tonight, and I just wanted to share something positive happening for me, too." The party erupted into hushed whispers. Mia shot me a concerned look while Kevin recoiled, uncertain of how to de-escalate the situation. After that, Jake abruptly left the room, his frustration palpable. I remember standing there, stunned. Had I actually just ruined his farewell night? The following days were awkward. Jake left for New York with unresolved feelings hanging in the air. I tried texting him, but he brushed off every message with short, curt replies. It felt surreal. Someone who was once my closest confidant was now acting like a distant stranger due to a single moment of thoughtlessness. Once he settled into his new job and rhythm, Jake reached out to say he had landed a significant project. But it was minimal small talk around vague updates. "How's the new place? How's work?" Would be met with "good busy" in return. His messages felt robotic, distant. I couldn't shake the feeling of loss at the demise of our once easy friendship. As the weeks went by, the weight of guilt pressed heavier on my chest. I questioned my own motives in bringing up that darn interview. Maybe I had acted selfishly, seeking attention when I should have just let the night be about him. The more I replayed it in my head, the more I doubted myself. Am I the a-hole here? Mia and Kevin tried to talk to me about it after Jake left. "He's just having a hard time adjusting," Mia had told me, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Don't take it personally." I could sense her wavering, like she didn't know which side she should take. That only made me question even further if I had crossed an invisible line that nobody had the courage to define. After weeks of silence, Jake finally called me just before Christmas. It was the first time I heard emotion crack in his voice. I was upset back then, he admitted. I was moving, everything was changing, and having you mention an interview felt like I was being overshadowed. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I needed closure, and perhaps a little self-justification. I get it. But I didn't mean to overshadow you. I was caught off guard too. I've struggled for so long and I felt happy for a minute. Can't I share that? My voice quivered a little, drenched in frustration and remorse. Silence hung between us for a moment. I could feel the tension crackling over the phone line. You have every right to feel that way, he finally responded. But sometimes, it's just hard to see the positive when you're stuck adjusting to a huge change. After a lengthy back and forth, we came to an understanding. But I couldn't shake the feeling of a friendship irreparably altered. The wounds were still fresh. The easy banter was gone, replaced with this sense of fragility in every conversation. It felt like we were walking on eggshells. Weeks turned into months, eventually leading to a new year where things began easing up between Jake and me. A tentative new normal formed, but each time I picked up my phone to text him, I hesitated, replaying that moment in my mind yet again. Am I the a-hole? He was new in town, exploring a vibrant city filled with opulence and opportunity, while I clung to my small life back home. Then, just when I thought things were finally working out, I got an invite to Meredith's wedding. Another friend. The wedding was in New York, set for the first weekend of June. Part of me was thrilled. I hadn't seen Jake in ages, and I thought this could be a perfect opportunity to reconnect face to face. A week after getting the invite, I texted Jake, looking to catch up while I was in town, but his reply felt cold. I might be busy, but thanks for the invite. My heart sank as reality set in. Maybe our bond had stretched too thin during our separation. I spent the next week second-guessing my decision to reach out. I even picked up the phone a few times to call, only to hang up before it rang. It was fear of crossing boundaries, of stepping on emotional landmines again. Then, to my utter shock, I got a text from Mia. Just a heads up, Jake won't be coming to the wedding. He said he can't handle seeing everyone again. I was stunned. All the frustration from our prior conversations boiled up again. It felt so unfair. Didn't he even care to try to mend things? I finally had the chance to see him, and because of what? I couldn't fathom it. Wedding day came, and as I stood surrounded by cheers and laughter, I couldn't shake that feelings of dread creeping over me. I looked around at my friends, knowing Jake was missing. Was I the a-hole for wanting him here? I was filled with regret, feeling like pieces of our friendship were missing and then obliterated by misunderstandings. When I returned home, I'd taken many breaths, examined my thoughts and feelings again like I was a concert violinist tuning a string. Clear and composed, I finally shot him a message, awkwardly dangling in uncertainty. Hey, hope you're doing well. We missed you at the wedding. Can we FaceTime soon? Hours passed, then finally a reply. I'd like that. I owe you an apology. It felt like another layer of the darkness was lifting. When we finally did chat, it was different this time. No underlying tension or veiled resentment, but authentic vulnerability. Jake shared his struggles adjusting to the fast-paced lifestyle of NYC, how his feelings had gotten the best of him, and how he regretted missing out on friendship. When I hung up, I felt lighter, not just about our friendship, but about facing my own insecurities. I even managed to laugh, grateful for clarity while realizing that friendships could weather storms, but only if both people were willing to forgive. Through all of it, I've learned that navigating adulthood is messy. Moments of pain can lead to breakthroughs, and sometimes just talking to someone, even if it feels uncomfortable, could heal rifts that seem insurmountable. I don't know if I am the a-hole, but I know people grow, and relationships are more about grace than perfection. Ultimately, we're all just figuring life out. Even when we stumble, we simply pick ourselves back up with calls, text messages, and more importantly, honesty. And while I'll always harbor a bit of jealousy, it's now paired with deep respect for Jake and ourselves navigating this chaotic world side by side, if only virtually for now. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my ex, even after she said she's changed? I never thought I'd find myself here, recounting the story of my broken relationship on a platform like Reddit. But here I am. Maybe I'm seeking validation or perhaps just some advice wrapped in anonymity. So here's the scoop. This is my Aita story. My name is Daniel, and I'm 32 years old. I used to be a pretty laid-back guy. I was easygoing, always going with the flow. But life isn't exactly a river that moves gently downstream, is it? It tends to toss you around like a rag doll. My ex, Sarah, was instrumental in that tempest. We met in our mid-20s at a mutual friend's birthday party. Despite the chaos of young adulthood, our connection was instant. We spent hours talking over laughter and shared dreams. Sarah was spunky and passionate about everything: art, music, life. She lit up every room she entered, and I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. But as often happens, that intensity had its downside. The first 2 years were blissful, but then small cracks began to show. At the outset, I had never seen the signs. We fought over trivial matters. She was impulsive and spent recklessly, while I preferred a grounded lifestyle. The tension built crescendos when she started outgrowing my stability, seeking excitement outside of our relationship. Eventually, she ended our love story with the same fire she had ignited it with, claiming I was holding her back. Needless to say, it was gut-wrenching. The breakup was like a snowball gathering momentum, and soon my whole life felt like it was spiraling out of control. I redoubled my efforts to work on myself. I immersed myself in my career, reconnected with old friends, and even learned to play the guitar. Though I was abysmal, I enjoyed it nonetheless. A year passed, and wounds healed, leading me to feel stronger and more self-reliant than ever. Fast forward 3 years, and here I was, getting the same expected text one evening. "Hey, can we talk?" It was from Sarah. My heart skipped a beat, a reminder of all the nostalgia tied to that name. Against my better judgment, I replied, "Sure." We met up at a coffee shop, one of our old haunts. Looking at her, it struck me how much time had changed. Us both. Sarah wore a smile that felt heavier, bearing invisible weights on her shoulders. We started small, talking about life, catching up on the mundane, the things that we'd missed. Then she dropped the bomb. "I've made some mistakes, Dan. I've hurt people, including you, and I'm really trying to change. I have so much regret about how I treated you. I just wanted to apologize." She seemed genuine, her eyes reflecting a sort of vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Part of me wanted to reach out, reassure her that it was all right, but the logical side of my brain countered, warning me against trusting her so easily. Nevertheless, she began to recount all the terrible things she had done in the past few years. The reckless behavior, the instability. She had lost jobs, friends, and peace of mind. And now she was desperately trying to turn her life around, finding a stable job, attending therapy, and working towards accountability. Despite my mixed feelings, I told her I was glad she was trying to make things right. We parted ways that day, leaving the air heavy with unresolved emotions. Days turned to weeks, and just as I thought I could finally move on from her presence in my life, a message popped up on my phone. "I'm in a bit of a bind. I need some help getting my life back on track. Would you be willing to assist me?" My heart sank. I hesitated, but ultimately decided to respond. "What do you mean by help?" She revealed that she had been struggling financially since her latest job fell through. She requested that I help her secure a part-time gig at my workplace. It was a huge ask from someone who had left me in a difficult spot 3 years ago. I could feel the memories of that heartbreak rear their ugly heads. I had built a new life without her, filled with friendships, opportunities, and a strong sense of self. The thought of bringing her into my current life above everything felt wrong. So I wrote back, "Listen, I really can't help you. I've moved on from that chapter of my life. It's best to focus on your own growth." It took an absurd amount of effort to click send, but I did. I thought I had laid my boundaries down clearly, but soon after, my friends began to question my decision. "Come on, man, can't you give her just one chance?" they said. My buddy Dave really pressed me. "What if she's genuinely changed? People deserve a second chance." I felt conflicted. I let my emotions swirl like leaves. in a tornado. Her plea had stirred up remnants of sympathy deep within me. But the familiar echo of the pain she had caused was deafening. I finally composed a post for Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my ex, even after she said she's changed? The responses poured in. Some echoed my feelings, affirming the weight of past trauma and the wisdom of caution. You've worked hard to get where you are, protect that. Others were more sympathetic. People can change, it's worth considering. The debate continued within me. Was I being selfish? Should I let bygones be bygones? But each recollection of Sarah's past reckless behavior flared up, reminding me of the stability I had clawed back for myself. Then, a few days later, Sarah reached out again, this time more adamantly. You don't understand. I've messed up my life too many times. I really need this. I promise I'll do better. I was taken aback. My heart ached for her, but I stood my ground. Maybe that's what bugged me. Her persistence felt like a desperate plea rather than a real transformation. People do change, but allowing her back into my life on any level felt reckless. I replied, I think it's best we go our separate ways. I can't help you. As the tension simmered, I found myself reflecting on the moral grounds of my decision. Was I an unwitting punisher, denying her a much-needed lifeboat, or was I merely protecting the foundation I had built alone? The next day, a friend of mine shared an article about boundaries and healing. It resonated with me deeply as it claimed, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation if doing so puts your well-being at risk. I pondered whether Sarah's journey was worth being a part of again. Weeks passed, and the text messages dwindled. My life continued to flow, interspersed with laughter and new adventures. Still, there was an echo of her remorse lingering at the back of my mind. Then, a couple of months later, I bumped into Sarah at a local gallery opening, almost a surreal twist of fate. She looked different, clearer, brighter, and minus the weight of her guilt. We exchanged polite hellos, and for a fleeting moment, I thought about my stance, wondering if perhaps she'd really changed. But as I left the gallery, the questions continued to swirl. Had I done the right thing in rejecting her? Could someone truly transform? And in that moment, the clarity I lacked before began to form. My mental health mattered just as much as hers. I was not the architect of her choices, nor was I her crutch. As I write this now, my heart feels lighter, daggers of self-doubt fading into the background. I don't know if Sarah changed for the better, or if her new life will hold, but I have learned to accept that I cannot save everyone, nor am I expected to. I posted my story on Reddit, not just to seek validation, but to untangle the uncertainties in my own heart. Was I the a-hole? I'd like to think I've become my own hero, and sometimes that's enough. If you're reading this, take it as a reminder. Sometimes it's okay to prioritize your well-being while extending empathy from afar.